build a snowman.
No, Anna, Dad does not want to build a snowman. Dad wants the snow to go away. Hey, welcome back to DadDrinks. Every pour tells a story. You saw the title card, and yeah, that's what it looks like here in Savannah. That's what it's looked like for 2 days now. We got Snowmageddon, which is nothing compared to what I went through as a young child, but is interesting in that the whole reason why DadDrinks and Mrs. DadDrinks moved out of New England was to not have to shovel snow. But anyway, so what do you do when it's cold like this? You don't want to have, like a frozen mudslide or a pina colada or something like that. You want something warm. So let's make up a hot toddy. You're going to start with 3/4 of a cup of hot water. Into that, I'm going to pour 2 ounces of bourbon. You can use bourbon, you can use rum, you can use Irish whiskey, whatever you want to use. I would say probably stay away from, the clear liquors, things like, gin or vodka. And if you're going to use rum, you probably want to use dark rum or some kind of spiced rum like Captain Morgan's. You're going to do a tablespoon of honey. Pour that in. I'm just going to put that in because at some point we're going to have to stir it anyway. And then 1/2 ounce of lemon juice. So there's your 1/2 ounce of lemon juice. Stir it all up. And if you just use the spoon that you put the honey in with, hopefully, with that hot water, any honey that's left on the spoon is going to kind of drip out and get in there. And then all you want to do, just garnish it with a cinnamon stick, which is just going to float around on the top there and not just kind of hang out. But cheers. Nice and warm, something nice to sit by the fire with on a cold day like today. So this is what happens in Savannah. Not the snow. We haven't seen snow in Savannah since 2018. But we usually get, 2-3 weeks or so where it gets cold, drops into the 20s, and everybody's worried that everybody's pipes are going to freeze because they're not insulated like they are up in the Northeast. One of the great things about living in the Northeast in New England or in areas where you do get a lot of snow, of course, is that you have a basement. So you can at least get to the pipes if they do freeze. Unlike here in Savannah, where like my particular house is built on a slab, which means all of the pipes are running through the slab. So if God forbid, and they haven't yet, knock on wood, they were to burst, we'd be, we'd have to start tearing up floors and jackhammering concrete. Other people have crawl spaces. I think the crawl space is probably a little bit better because at least you can get to that stuff. But that's really not the story I want to talk about. The story I want to talk about is the difference, I guess, in snowstorms from when I was a kid living up in New England to what happened here. What happened here in Savannah is basically we got probably 3 to 4 inches of snow. The issue is that before the snow, we had sleet and freezing rain. So what happens is you have the snow, and once cars drive by and start kicking up the snow and getting rid of the snow, then what you end up with is the black ice that is sitting on top of the road. So we've got trucks that can't make it up the Talmadge Bridge, which is what goes over the Savannah River between Savannah and South Carolina. All the islands we have in the Savannah area in Chatham County, you can't get out to the islands because, of course, bridge freezes before road surface, and all those bridges are closed, all the causeways. So, in the South, obviously, you get a 1/4 inch of snow. That is much different than if you live up in New England or in the Midwest or, out in the Rocky Mountains where people are used to snow and they have snow chains and they have snow tires. But probably the worst snow that I can remember as a child was the blizzard of 1978 in New England, which hit all the New England states. Record-setting snow, problems for people getting around. It was actually named, this particular storm that we just had here in the Southeast was named Winter Storm Enzo. And the naming of storm, like I heard someone go, winter storms don't have names. It's just, companies that are trying to sell money and marketing. Winter storms, when I was a kid, always had names. The blizzard of '78 was actually Winter Storm Larry. Uh, and that was named because when I was growing up in Connecticut, the Travelers Insurance Company actually ran a weather service called the Travelers Weather Service. And that was one of their big gimmicks. They would name all these storms that happened in New England. But the blizzard of '78, yeah, it was Winter Storm Larry, but everyone calls it the blizzard of '78. It basically started on February 5th, a Monday, in New England, 1978, and snowed for 2 straight days into the 7th, which was the Wednesday. And the issue, the biggest problem that came about from that was that back then, weathermen were not exactly known for their accuracy, especially when it came to winter storms in New England. So the weathermen had all come out over the weekend, that particular weekend, and said, this is going to be bad. It's going to start snowing on Monday, Sunday night into Monday morning. And the thing was, when people woke up on Monday morning and it wasn't snowing, they were like, oh, just another bad forecast. So they all went to work. And then the snow started during the day. And it came down heavy. It was, these big, huge flakes, and it came down at, not an inch an hour, but inches an hour. So what happened was all these people went to work, and then they couldn't get home. If you look for pictures on the internet, you will see Route 128, which is the ring road that runs around Boston, so that you don't have to drive directly through Boston. Just cars abandoned on 128, along with snowplows, because the snowplows couldn't get through either, because these people had got to work and then had to try and figure out a way to get home. The weather was so bad that people who had gone to the Beanpot hockey tournament in Boston at the old Boston Garden, and the Beanpot is where the 4 colleges in Boston basically play against each other in a tournament. They went to the Beanpot Monday, and it started in the afternoon. They went in the afternoon, they walk out in the evening, and no one can move anywhere because there's 27 inches of snow in Boston. So many of them actually had to spend several days basically living at the garden, which even back then in 1978 was falling down and was not conducive to that kind of stuff. The Civic Center roof in Hartford, the Hartford Civic Center, the roof collapsed, which meant that the Hartford Whalers, they may not have been the Hartford Whalers, and they might have still been the New England Whalers, but the Hartford Whalers, who were still playing in the World Hockey Association, because the next year they would move into the NHL, the Whalers actually had to go on the road, and they had to play their home games for roughly 18 months up in Springfield, the Springfield Civic Center, which was roughly about 1/3 the size of the Hartford Civic Center, which was not a good introduction to the other teams in the NHL when they, moved into the NHL the next year. Even worse than, for instance, the Arizona Coyotes, who, until they moved to Utah this year, were playing out of I think it was like a 10,000 seat rink at some local college. So and the thing is, so out of all of that in the winter in '78, basically that was the only time I can remember ever having multiple snow days off. We had like 3 or 4 days off during that time. And the thing is, I always get a kick out of this nowadays, how kids, they get texted or they get an email or whatever telling them that there's no school. We either had to watch the TV and watch a newscast, and at the bottom of the newscast, like the ticker on ESPN News, would be running across everybody who was being, whose schools were either canceled for the day or delayed for a couple of hours so they could clear roads or whatever. And it was all in alphabetical order. And if you missed it, all of a sudden you had to sit there and wait for it to come back around. Or, in my case, it wasn't TV. I mean, I wasn't even to that point. For me, it was basically you had to listen to the radio first thing in the morning. The nice thing was our radio station was local, so we always got the first announcement, even though, our town began with a T, which would be farther down the road, but because the radio station was there, they'd announce it. So how does this compare? Well, I don't know. I mean, it compares to what's going on now, just simply because it's so unprecedented in this area. I mean, you see the videos from New Orleans, guys playing hockey on Canal Street. Other people who are cross country skiing down Bourbon Street. But at least Pat O'Brien's and John Lafitte's are open, so people have places to go on Bourbon Street. You look at the beaches in Mississippi. I saw one the other day, or actually today, somebody who did a reel, and they've got 8 inches of snow on the beach in Mississippi. That's not supposed to happen. That's why like I said, that's why we moved to the South, because you don't have to shovel humidity. But now I got snow. So now I have to wait until Saturday and hope that it all melts by then, which it probably will, because it's supposed to get up into the 50s or 60s, and it's only like 4 inches of snow. So, from a snowy Savannah, never thought I'd say that. Never thought those 2 words would go together. It's DadDrinks. Remember, every pour tells a story. So find yourself a fireplace, sit down, make yourself a hot toddy, and just relax. Cheers. Please hit like and subscribe, and visit daddrinks.com for recipes, merchandise, and more fun stuff.